Finding a place to rent in the Netherlands can be quite challenging. In today's video, I want to guide you through the whole process and share everything I learned about renting an apartment here in the Netherlands to help you with your search. This guide is mostly oriented to the expats who's coming to the country for the first time, but people who live here for a while might also find something useful in here. Let's dive into it. The first two questions you can ask yourself when you're moving to the Netherlands are: when can you leave when you're looking for a permanent place, and is it possible to find a place online before the arrival? There are a few options when it comes to the temporary living. You can find a hotel or Airbnb. You can ask your employer for temporary living if they have the apartments, usually the case for bigger companies, or you can find a temporary apartment. If you are not lucky enough to have accommodation provided by your employer, I would recommend using hotels or Airbnb. They can be extremely expensive, but they save you tons of time and a hassle finding a temporary housing. I think it's best to focus on the task at hand, finding a permanent place to live, rather than spreading yourself too thin and finding a temporary living. Airbnbs are really expensive here in the Netherlands because of the different regulations and defending the regular rental places. So I recommend checking both hotels and Airbnb when you're searching in your specific city. In our case, renting a hotel in The Hague was much cheaper than any Airbnb in the city. By the way, the hotel that we stayed called the Social Hub, and I think they provide a really nice value for money. They're not a sponsor of this video, but I genuinely liked staying with them. For the price, I paid around 3,000 per month. You get a hotel room and a lot of amenities like laundry room, co-working space, shared spaces, and many events happening inside the hotel. The hotel was originally designed for students, but it's good for everyone. They exist in many cities, so I recommend checking them out. Regarding finding a place online, I have some bad news for you. It's gonna be really hard. Most landlords won't even talk to you. I know a few successful cases of this, but you have to spend a lot of time researching for an apartment. I would say from 2 to 4 months, and you have to search everywhere in the country, in all the cities. With just one specific city in mind, it's gonna be really challenging. If you have an opportunity to rent a hotel or Airbnb for just a month, it will be much faster and more convenient to you. Now let's talk about the areas of Netherlands. Firstly, I hope you already know the city you're going to. For most people, the city is determined by the work or university, but even if you work in a large city, I would still take some time and research satellite cities. For example, renting in Amsterdam is extremely hard and expensive, so instead of living in the city, you can consider some of the satellite cities like Almere, Hoofddorp, Zaandam, or even cities a bit far away like Hoorn or Hilversum. The train system is really good in the Netherlands, so you might have a better time going to work on the train than finding a place in Amsterdam. After picking the desired city, you might want to research some neighborhoods. It's not necessary to limit you to a certain areas, but it's good to have a list of the areas you might like or you don't like at all. It's another pro of searching the apartment when you're already in the Netherlands. When we only arrived, we spent the whole weekends and evenings just walking around different neighborhoods and just imagining our lives there. There are a few really useful services that I want to share with you related to the area research. If you watched me for some time, you know I'm a big fan of Nomad List, the project for digital nomads, but they also have a useful free sub-project called hoodmaps.com. Here you can pick any city and see the neighborhoods. It's fully crowdsourced, you can find some not pleasant things written about the areas, but it can give you an approximate idea of what a specific area is about. Another great resource, especially if you have to travel to work, called Map It Out. You need to pick a destination first, then you can pick the transport you will be using and the amount of time you're willing to spend on the commute. The map then calculates all the areas that are within the distance of the place on the desired transport. Great service. The last great area search website is Huizenzocker. It's mostly for purchasing a house, but you can find a lot of great info here. It shows the type of areas according to city planning, like commercial, living or agriculture areas. If you have kids, it might be useful to see the closest school or kindergartens. Also, you can find the closest supermarkets, public transportation stations, and even statistics about home burglaries. The website is fully in Dutch, but you can figure it out with online translation. Another thing you want to do is to create a list of things you're interested in your future apartment. Your price limit, of course the areas where you're looking for an apartment, furnished or unfurnished. By the way, most of the apartments in the Netherlands goes unfurnished, and sometimes they don't even have a floor. Yes, you heard me right. The previous tenant usually take the floor with them and bring them to the next apartment. You get an apartment without floor. But of course, sometimes you can buy the floor from the previous tenant, or in the new buildings they usually have the floor already installed. The unfurnished apartments usually have a shower and a toilet, and also kitchen supplies like dishwasher, oven, stove and the fridge. Other things you may consider is how far the apartment from the closest public transportation station or from train station. Also, what size of the apartment you want. Should it be a 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom apartment? Do you want any outside areas like balcony or maybe a deck or even a small garden? But after creating this perfect list, be ready to give something up. The reality is you'll probably never find your perfect apartment, especially if you first rent in the country, but it's good to have a wish list anyway. Now let's talk about the whole process of finding a place. I would recommend using Funda.nl. It's the most popular website in Holland for renting or buying a property. Most of the available apartments will be listed here. Other website you might consider is Pararius.com, or smaller websites about one specific city like Perfect Rent in Rotterdam. Another interesting service is Rentslam.com. They do a job for you and send you the apartments according to your needs, but I would still recommend starting with Funda. So this is a Funda.com website, and you can change the language actually here in the bottom to the English, and we go to the for rent section, put the desired city, for example Rotterdam. Here you already can pick your limit on the rent, let's say 2,000 euro per month, and this is an interface with a lot of different filters. For example, you can pick the apartment property type, when it was published on Funda. I would recommend picking the available, because you don't want to see the apartments that are already rented. When it was available, of course, which type of rental agreement, but I've never picked these ones because it can be renegotiated during the viewings or later. The floor area is quite useful because if you want a certain apartment size, you can pick here plot area, number of rooms, specific bedroom and exterior space. For example, we want to have balcony. Here more advanced settings like age of the property, if you know what you want, surroundings like water in the center, etc. New or resale, but it's actually not recommend to pick this one because new is really rare. If you need a garage, comes with a renewable energy, etc. Accessibility features and energy label. Let's say we want A, B and C, and some extras. You see there is nothing available by these extras. You can even search in the description. It's pretty useful if you want to look for specific keywords. And here we can see the map of the Rotterdam and the places where they're located, which is quite useful to represent it kind of visually, but also just listings. And here you can see the apartment, all the photos of the apartment. They usually have a scheme at the end of the whole apartment, and the contacts. Here you have two options. You can contact with the agent directly, so show the phone number, call it, or click the contact agents and contact them via this form on the Funda. And also sometimes there is a feature plan a viewing, and it's basically the same as a contact the agent, but you add some preferable information when you want to see the apartment. And of course the description is quite important. You can read everything. It's often in Dutch, but you can use translators. You can see here is in English. The second part of the description is in English and the first part is in Dutch, so it's also quite common. And here you will find all the information you need, and also some features of the apartment, like when it was built. You see there is an energy label. You can check how many times it was viewed and saved, and when it was published, and of course the map. You can even have the kind of like travel time if you want to add some specific locations like school, for example, elementary school, and you can click and it shows you on different types of transportation how long does it take to reach this destination. Overall, Funda is really nice website, and it has a lot of features, and you can some explore yourself. You can see there's even a video sometimes about the apartment from the agency. It's really hard to talk about rental prices here in the Netherlands because they may vary a lot depending on the different conditions, different cities, areas, etc. I would recommend using Funda even before your arrival and researching some prices in the city or cities you're considering to move to. Don't forget to budget for some additional expenses like paying for energy bills or some additional service fee in the building, and of course buying a furniture if it's an unfurnished place. I can only share my experience, and I rented an apartment for 1,617 euro in The Hague. It's a 72 square meters apartment in a nice area right near the beach, but it's quite far away from the city center. It's a new building in a very quiet neighborhood surrounded by mostly detached houses. The flat was fully unfurnished, but with the floor, kitchen and bathroom in place. I should also mention that this year, because we're moving out, they increased the price to 1,800, and it was rented out in a week after publishing. There was just one viewing day. If you're curious to learn about other costs of living in the Netherlands, I have another video, make sure to check it out by the link in the description. Housing crises in the Netherlands are real, and lack of housing supply and huge amount of expats that coming to the country drive the price up, especially in the Randstad and other big cities in the country. I don't want to scare you, but you should be prepared. It could take you a lot of time to find a place, and it could cost you a pretty penny. Another things I want to talk about is social and affordable housing. Social housing is a program from the government that allow people with lower incomes find more affordable places. The requirements for 2023 to have the highest income of around 44,000 euros for a single person and around 48,000 for a family. If you are eligible, you can count for more affordable places, usually the price for rent around 800 euros or lower for 2023, and it's a great benefit, but as I heard, the lines to get this permit is quite high, so you can wait for a long time. But if you fit into the category, I would definitely recommend researching this option. Another option that exists only in some specific municipalities is affordable housing. It's a middle step from the social housing to the regular free market. You need to research a little bit more on the specific municipality website, but I can tell you about the Hague affordable housing. It requires you to have an income lower than 61,000 euro for a single person and 77,000 for a couple. This permit is much easier to get, at least in The Hague, and you already can start looking for an apartment when you apply for a permit. This opens much more affordable apartments and just more of them. The price of the apartments are usually lower than 1,015 euro, but the price also could be higher because it also applies for selected houses based on some specific scoring system they have. But they're definitely more affordable than the regular free market apartments. So if you see some apartments for, let's say, 1,200 euros and it still requires housing permit, don't be surprised. Another thing I should mention is you have to have some savings, because the landlord usually asks you to pay the deposit in front. For example, 1 month's deposit you have to pay, and you only will get it back once you move out from the apartment. But if you're new to the country, it could be even higher deposit. For example, I paid 3 monthly payments rent just for the deposit, because I didn't have any rental history in the Netherlands. It's important to know about this, because even if your salary is above the limit, you should be aware of the listings where it says house permit required. Because if you are not eligible for this permit, you may not bother and not apply for them. I wish Funda has a filter based on this, but unfortunately you have to just look for the wording in the description. After you're invited to the interview, you usually have a slot for about 15 minutes, so get your list ready and be prepared to quickly check everything you're interested in. It's great to have a list right on your phone, so you can quickly just check all the boxes you're interested in inside or outside of the house. Sometimes the apartments show to every people at once, so it's just a huge crowd walking around the apartment, but more often it's just a quick time slots, 15-20 minutes, and everybody go after each other. So this way you kind of feel more confident and you can check the place just for yourself. But make sure not to be late, because you can miss your slot and you won't be able to view the place at all. Just as an example or inspiration for your own list, this is the things I checked inside the apartment. It's a balcony. We really wanted to have some outside area. We were looking for places for 16 square meters or more. We wanted to have one or preferably two bedroom, or maybe not a second bedroom but just a small room, so we can turn it into the office because we work from home. And also we would like to have a modern building, because we didn't know anything about the buildings in the Netherlands, so modern build is usually more reassuring. In the area around the house we were looking for a nice park or some hanging area like a beach. We also wanted to live in a quiet area, so a little bit far away from city center, all the bars, clubs, etc. Also, of course, the ability to hop on the public transportation so we can reach the city center more conveniently. We've been looking for energy labels as well, so it's A or B, so we won't spend too much money on gas and electricity. And as an optional thing, we wanted to have a large windows, which we eventually did. It allows you first of all to have a lot of natural sunlight. It also economical thing for electricity and gas, because your apartment is heating much better. If you're planning to get a bike here, which I absolutely recommend doing to anyone, make sure you think also where you're going to be storing it. It's not always great to store it just outside of the building, because the bike theft are pretty common here, so maybe the building has some storage. But Netherlands is a bike country, so it's often taken into account by the building planners. After the visiting, the viewing, and if you like the place, you have to apply for it. It's different for each agency, but it's usually either you have to fill in something during the viewing or they will send you email later. Sometimes you also have to email them yourself. It's especially the case when they have a lot of applicants. Sometimes they can ask you to sign up to some specific agency website to upload all the documents. Sometimes it's just via email. Don't delay this process, and if you really like the place, apply as fast as possible. Sometimes the apartments are just rented out in a week after they were published on the website. If you're not sure what's the process for the specific apartment or agency, just ask during the viewing and follow the instructions carefully, and don't forget to send all the documents they're asking for. Requirements for the documents could also vary. Here are some documents I've been asked in the different places. Your ID or passport, your work contract, employer statement. It usually shows that they will be employing you for some time, especially important for short-term 1 or 2 year contracts. Your salary slips from your job if you have already got your salary. Your bank statement, usually they are only interested in Dutch bank accounts, but I have sent them my foreign bank account statement as well. Extract from PRP, which is Municipal Personal Record Database. You can get it in the municipality of your city. Recent tenant statement if you have already rented an apartment here. Extract from tax authorities. It only makes sense if you work here for some time. Labor history and wage data, same as the above, only when you work here for a while. If you are self-employed, they can ask you for your full balance sheet with profits and losses. Tax returns for an extensive period like a few years. Extract from KVK, which is Chambers of Commerce here, where your company is registered. Tenant laws are really strict in the Netherlands. That's why you're being asked for so many documents. Basically, if you're already renting an apartment, it's gonna be really hard for a landlord to evict you, even if you stop paying the rent. That's why they wanted to make sure that you have the money for extensive period of times to pay your rent. For self-employed or business owners, the check is even more deeper, because if you lose your business, you're not protected by any employment laws and you can immediately lose all your income or all the money you have. Unfortunately, I also have some bad news for the people who are coming into the country for the first time. Since you don't have any tax or employment or any salary history yet, you will always be at the bottom of the list of the potential candidates for the apartment. That's why you have to easy on your personal requirements, and for the first year maybe considering less than perfect place, and maybe re-rent it after a year or two living in the country when you will already have some history. I've never heard about any discrimination based on the expats versus Dutch people like it happens in some other countries. So basically the only downside you have is the lack of history living in the country. So remember, the first time is always the hardest. After you have sent all your documents, do not stop your search. The chance that you will be selected for the first appointment is not 100%, so continue looking. Persistence will eventually pay off and you will receive the desired letter. Congratulations, the landlord has chosen you as a tenant. Time to celebrate. Another important thing to mention is the rental contract. Make sure you read through the whole contract thoroughly and you agree to everything that is written there. Most of the rental agencies in the Netherlands can provide you with both Dutch and English rental contracts, so you won't have to worry about finding the translator. The contract is usually limited in time with the possibility to extend it for indefinite contract. It should include all your rights, all the things you can change in the apartment and you things you can't, everything that was inside the apartment, and all the information about payments and deposits you paid. Sometimes they even give you a separate checklist with all the things that are inside the apartment and its condition, which is common handy when you're gonna be moving out. You don't want to pay for something you didn't break. Also, make sure it includes the closure that the landlord have to fix or cover for fixes of all required maintenance or repairs inside the flat. There are still some things you have to do after you're moving into the apartment, like establishing the new contracts for the energy or water supply, and also registering in the municipality with your new address, but this already goes beyond the scope of the video. I will definitely cover it in a separate one. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the video. With that in mind, I wish you good luck to finding your apartment, and I hope you will find a great place and you will find it quickly, and I hope this video will guide you through the process and will be helpful. As usual, don't forget to check my other videos about living in the Netherlands. For example, this video when I sharing my review of living here for 9 months, and also this video about how I ended up in this country. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. And see you in the next one. Bye bye.